Diatoms can also be planktonic, which means they're just floating in the water, and these are holoplankton, which spend their entire life cycle as plankton, and even though they have this mineralized skeleton, the skeleton is not as heavy, and they have lower rates of sinking, so they can actually remain suspended pretty easily in the water. Now, in contrast to these, which spend their entire life cycle in the water, there's another group that we call miroplanktonic, and they spend one phase of their life in the resting stage as a spore in the sediment, and they rely on the annual mixing of the lake to then pick them up and bring them up to where the light is, and then they begin to divide. These are interesting to me because if you look at the SEM of the skeleton, it's much more strongly mineralized, and these require a lot more energy to keep them suspended in the water column. And so you're going to get greater abundances of these in lakes that have storms, that are windy, and a lot more vigorous mixing. And they may be useful to us in discriminating between different conditions in the ancient lake. So diatoms are so diverse and they're so responsive to these different environmental conditions. They've been used in a variety of applications. For example, water quality, eutrophication. So, for example, if you have cultural influences such as runoff, agricultural nutrients, or air pollution that has nitrogen, that can get into the aquatic system, and it can substantially change the diatoms. And as an example, this species, Stephanodiscus minutulus, this is a picture taken from one of the cores, and locally it's very abundant, and I'm thinking it might help tell us times in the past where these lakes might have been more eutrophic. Now, Scott talked about the cannabis, and that there was a period of time I guess it was during the Little Ice Age, or was it after the Little Ice Age, where there was probably a lot of cannabis use. One of the practices was to soak the ropes in the water, and this created a lot of extra eutrophication. So one prediction is that we might see spikes of abundances of these things associated with those behaviors. And then certainly in the modern lakes today, we will expect to see some evidence of that. Other aspects of application for diatoms are climate, and in this system, in particularly aspects of the watershed that may change the hydrology may become important. So I want to go back to this idea of a big lake and a small lake in the Rieta Basin. And this is a nice picture I found on the internet, and what it shows is the modern lakes today. So here's Ripasutile, Lago Lungo, and Ventina, from which we have the cores. And the light color shows the footprint of the big lake that has been referred to in the literature as Lacus Valinus. And you can see that this big lake encompasses all of these smaller lakes. And then if we go to the north, this is where Marmore is in the waterfall today. In addition, it also encompasses this lake, Piediluco, which is currently the deepest lake that's in the Rieta Basin area. If we look at the modern, we can see different characteristics limnologically of these lakes. For example, work in the 1960s on Piediluco shows that this lake actually stratifies for 1 month of the year, so you have a low-density warm layer on the surface that resists the entire mixing of the lake. But in contrast, if you look at the 3 lakes that we're studying, these lakes here, the maximum depth is only about 5 meters. And in general, if a lake is less than 10 meters deep, it's not going to stratify. It's just going to stay mixed all year round because the depth at which the wind can reach is sufficient to touch the bottom. And so you're going to have a very different system from a limnologic standpoint. So what had one big lake, the water is going to be deeper, you're going to have different types of input, and the lake should respond differently, and we hope that the diatoms during the big lake stages will look different than what they look during the small stages. So to just compare, I don't have data for the diatoms yet,